Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 614, 614, November the 21st, 2018, Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Of course, you know on Wednesday I have chicken and take out the trash. That's exactly what I'll be doing as soon as I finish this video. Now, before I get started on the day's news, I want to apologize for the poor quality of yesterday's audio on the video. Still, I'm playing around still with some things to try to get the volume of my videos up and trying to do it without creating too many bad noises in the video, but it didn't really work out what I was doing yesterday, and there was a lot of issues with the audio, a lot of popping and bumping and stuff like that. So hopefully today will be much better, but I think that yesterday's audio may have been so bad that a lot of people probably didn't even make it through the whole video, and I don't blame them. The most important thing about yesterday's video was the last 10 minutes where I talked about what I think the best way is to move forward to unravel the Spygate conspiracy. And so for those who didn't make it through the full video because of the poor audio quality yesterday, I just want to do a brief recap of what I said at the end of the video for those who didn't make it that far, or for those of who didn't see the video at all. So yesterday I was just saying at the end of the video, I was just saying that looking at where we are right now with the Democrats have won the House and that type of thing, and we have Whitaker in there now, Sessions is gone, Rodenstein's still there, but he's not running the Mueller investigation anymore. But so I just want to kind of look at the lay of the land and see what I think the best way is to move forward to unravel the Spygate conspiracy and expose the criminals and their crimes and hold them accountable ultimately. So what I was saying is that at this point, a couple important things to keep in mind as we're moving forward from here, and that is that we learned from Nunes and Goodlatte and Gowdy and Meadows that a lot of the information, witness testimony, and a lot of the information they've gotten through requests and things like that are now going to be turned over to the two committees in the Senate, which would be the Senate Judiciary Committee, which is Lindsey Graham, and the Senate Oversight Committee, which is Ron Johnson. So they'll be the two now who will pretty much be doing what was being done in the House. And that's actually very good because the Senate actually has more power than the House. So if Lindsey Graham follows through on what he says, and if Ron Johnson follows through, and he's a pretty good guy, if they follow through and actually continue working on this investigation, then I think that that's good news, maybe even better than having it in the House. And let's not forget that when Trump went to declassify this last round of information, which was, of course, the Bruce Orr 302s, the Gang of Eight information, as well as the 20 pages of the Carter Page FISA warrant, Trump was going to declassify that, said he would, then he changed his mind after talking to Rodenstein, and we've already talked about why that may have happened. But remember what Trump did. He turned it over to, he did declassify it, or he did get that information, but he turned it over to Horowitz, Inspector General Horowitz. So that's where it is now. So I was saying that because Whitaker is now in charge as the acting AG, obviously if he tries to make a move like appoint a special counsel or any of these things, he can certainly do it, but it will create a political firestorm. And I don't think that Trump wants that. I don't think that Whitaker wants that. So while he could do that, maybe isn't the best course of action. Because ultimately what we want is the results, right? So I'm thinking that, just the way I look at it, what might be best is to allow Horowitz to complete his investigation and put out his report, which we hear that he's getting relatively close to that, and that they expect that they'll be having the report right after the first of the year, or at least ways it will be into its final stages toward the end of the year. Now, typically, when Congress is doing an investigation that's the same investigation as the IG is doing, the Congress will try to get their report out just before the IG report. So if this is all true and things play out the way that it looks like they're playing out, that means that these two committees in the Senate will continue to interview witnesses. They'll get all the information that Goodlatte and Gowdy's committee had, as well as Nunes committee had. They'll have all that. They'll have some new witnesses. They'll have some of their own new material. Anything that comes that we learn new between now and the release of the IG report. What they would likely do is that as soon as they learn that Horowitz is ready to release his report, just prior to that, they'll release their report. Both Johnson and Lindsey Graham have called for a special counsel. I would expect that they'll release their report, mostly to the public, probably mostly unredacted, and they will give it to the IG, which we believe at this time will still be Whitaker, at which point they can say, and we think you should appoint a special counsel, which he'll certainly, I'm sure, take into consideration. But what he might be waiting for is the IG report, because once the IG report comes out, the IG, Horowitz, cannot hide or fudge his report, because everyone knows what he's got. These guys who did all this investigation in the Congress, many of them know what the evidence is. Trump certainly knows what the evidence is. Certainly Whitaker knows what the evidence is. Rodenstein knows what the evidence is. Lindsey Graham, all these guys, they all know what the evidence is. They also know that Horowitz was given the declassified, or the 20 pages of the Carter Page FISA. He's got the Bruce Orr 302s. He's got the Gang of Eight stuff. He's got these communications between the DOJ and the FBI, which Nunes says are very explosive. In fact, Nunes says if these four things were released, that would be the end of the Mueller investigation, the end of the entire Spygate narrative, or Trump-Russian narrative, and it would open up the new investigation into the real crimes, which of course was the Spygate-related things. So it looks like the best course of action for Whitaker would be to wait, allow the IG to put out his report, and we can expect that the Senate will put out their reports just before the IG report comes out, and Horowitz will have to put out a good report, at which point Whitaker will then be able to either appoint a special counsel. He can investigate it within the Department of Justice himself, or hey, let's not forget you got Huber sitting out there, John Huber, appointed by Sessions. He's got the full prosecutorial powers. Maybe Whitaker will turn it over to Huber and say, hey, here's the IG report, here's all this other stuff. It looks like there's plenty of evidence of crimes. Here you go, Mr. Huber. Get on it and start prosecuting these people. Or he could bring in another special counsel. But this will give Whitaker cover. It would give Trump cover, because no one can then come and say, hey, Trump and Whitaker are running this game to run this Spygate thing, and we need to investigate all this. They won't be able to do that because Inspector General Horowitz we've already been told he's a straight shooter. He's down the middle. He's not left or right. He's truly independent. He has unbiased investigators. All these things is what we've all been told. So you let Horowitz come out and drop the bad news. And then, unlike Sessions or Rodenstein, who would not act on the IG report the last time it came out, this time you have an AG who will act on it. Say, yes, this points out that there were real crimes, or certainly things that need to be investigated, and if we find that there were crimes committed, yes, they need to be prosecuted. So I think that this may be the best way to go moving forward. Allow the IG to put out his report, which, remember, he's looking into the FISA warrants, he's looking into the informants into the campaign, he's looking into the dossier and how that got mixed into the FBI and all that sort of stuff. So Horowitz, the next report he's going to put out is going to have a lot to do with the Spygate sort of things that we're all interested in, which will play perfectly into the investigation that's began in the House and will now move to the Senate. And now, of course, we have an Attorney General who will actually investigate and prosecute, as opposed to when we had Sessions and Rodenstein. Rodenstein doing the cover-up and Sessions just basically out to lunch. So this is my thoughts on this is where I'll be focusing, and this is what I'll be looking at, and this is kind of the direction I'll be working towards in my research and trying to understand where we go next. So this is my ideas on how I think things may move forward, or may best move forward from here as we go on into the new year and continue to try to unravel this massive conspiracy and hold the perpetrators accountable. It's the most important thing here. Not letting go. And again, as I've said before, I think this conspiracy, these crimes are too great to be ignored. I don't think they'll go away. I don't think they can sweep this one under the rug. I really don't. And I also believe that Trump is just not the type of person to, he knows what was done to him. I have a rough time believing he's just going to sit back and not do nothing. I think he's got a plan per se. I don't know how detailed his plan is, and I don't know what his plan is. But if it were me at this point, as I'm saying, I think the best thing to do is to allow the IG to put out his report, along with the Congress to put out their report, the Senate, and then let Whitaker appoint a special prosecutor, or tell Huber to get busy, or have it, an investigation from within, or what have you. Whatever he's going to do. But I think that Whitaker will act on the IG's report, unlike Sessions and Rodenstein. And I think that's probably the best way to move forward, other than, I think, a presidential commission. So that's my thoughts on that. In case you missed it yesterday, there it is. Now let's get to the news of the day. There's a rumor that the Republicans are trying to cut a deal with Nancy Pelosi because she knows that there's about 18, 19, 20 Democrats that are holding to it, saying that they're not going to vote for her. Now, she still has a couple of weeks to bust her knuckles, and she likely can do that. But there may be something else going on behind the scenes. This is just kind of one of them little rumor things going around. The rumor is that there's some key Republicans consulting with Pelosi, telling her, hey, if it looks like your Democrats try to pull one on you and keep you from being the Speaker, we'll be more than happy for some of our Republicans to supply you with the votes that you need to make sure you become Speaker. But in return, what we want is a deal. And the deal is we'll make sure you become Speaker, but you got to give us a couple things. And what I'm hearing is that one of the things that they may be wanting is for Nancy Pelosi to allow any bill that they get 290 votes for in the House to be brought up for a full vote in the House, because Nancy Pelosi, as Speaker, determines what bills come up, on the House floor for a full vote in the House. She would largely, for the most part, try to stop any Republican type bill that she didn't like or didn't agree with. So the Republicans have about a little over 290 seats right now. So they've used this number 290 to say, okay, so if we can get a bill that's 200, we can get 290 votes. We want you to make sure that it gets a vote in the House, and in exchange for that, we will support you for Speaker so that you don't get railroaded by the left-wing Democrats in your party. We'll make sure you become Speaker, but you got to give us the ability to have floor votes on any bill that we can get 290 votes for. In other words, it's kind of a way of giving Nancy Pelosi the power that she wants as Speaker, but at the same time taking away some of her power. It's by saying, yeah, we'll give you the power you want as Speaker, but you're going to have slightly limited powers because we're going to have some leverage on you, because the deal you're going to have to cut with us if you want to be Speaker. So this is something that's been floating around in the rumor mill for a day or two. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I think Nancy Pelosi certainly would not cut this deal unless she absolutely had to. I think that we won't know until she has her vote with the caucus, which would mean the Democrats only. I think when she sees the votes with Democrats only, if she doesn't get there and there's no strong challenger, and that's really the issue right now, is there's really no one in the Democratic Party other than maybe Tim Ryan, who is really coming out saying, yes, I'm going to challenge Pelosi. Now, Marcia Fudge was talking about it, but she's backed down. So Tim Ryan has tried it 2 or 3 times. He's never been able to get the support. So and that's why I don't think it'll happen. I think Pelosi will end up probably getting the votes. But if something should happen and these 18 or 20 Democrats do stick together and deprive her of the 218 she needs, then if she comes up a few votes short, she will be forced to go cut a deal with the Republicans if she wants to hold the seat. And my guess is the Republicans would rather have Pelosi for various reasons than have someone like a Tim Ryan or a Marcia Fudge or someone like that. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But that's what the rumor mill is saying, and we won't know probably until the Democratic caucus votes in about 2 to 3 weeks. Well, Trump's going to Florida for a vacation for a few days, for Thanksgiving vacation, and on the way out he did a little presser, and he did say that he has turned his answers to the questions given to him by Uncle Bob over to his attorneys. I guess they're reviewing them, and they will be forwarding them over to Uncle Bob the executioner in the next day or so. So he has submitted the questions, and I guess we'll see where that goes from here. Again, I have advised against that. The only way I would support Trump answering those questions is if he has in writing a deal from Uncle Bob saying, yeah, answer these questions and there will be no follow-up questions to those questions. We will end the investigation. We just need your questions, answers to these questions to finish our report. If Trump has a guarantee that this finishes up the Uncle Bob witch hunt, if this finishes it up and all he wants is the answers to these questions and he's promised not to press for more, then I would probably do it. Otherwise, I never would have done this. We'll find out what happens very, very soon. So this Obama-appointed commie judge, John Tigger has issued a restraining order against Trump's asylum order as it relates to the migrant caravan, the invasion. And this is, I guess, Ninth Circuit Court. I don't think it surprised anybody. I think they fully expected that one of the commie judges appointed by Obama would pull this stunt, and they did. So this will go to the Supreme Court, and Trump will win this in the Supreme Court, just like he did with the so-called Muslim ban. So this is perfectly within the president's. The president he has the executive authority to determine who could be a threat to the country, and particularly in regards to securing our borders. He has the power to do this. But you're always going to get one of these. Again, this is just another judge filing another suit or ruling on another issue that they know they're going to lose. They just want to create as much chaos and as many problems as they can for Trump. Challenge everything. Challenge everything. That's exactly what it's going to be, as long as these people are around. But Trump will win this in the Supreme Court. But again, it just creates a problem because the issue is happening now. And I think the way this works is since this judge has ruled, that probably is now the standing ruling for now. How fast it gets to the Supreme Court, and I imagine it'll get there pretty quick because this issue is happening as this is all going on. We'll just have to wait and see what the ruling is. But it's just frustrating, but that's life in the swamp. So now you have a bunch of Democrats who are raising hell and wanting an investigation. In fact, saying they're going to have an investigation into Ivanka because of emails that she had, I guess, that they believe are similar to what Hillary had. But it's not similar at all to what Hillary did. Hillary had a private server which was unencrypted, unprotected. She had hundreds, if not thousands, of classified emails sent and received through that server. The emails that she destroyed, 30,000 of them at least, were under subpoena at the time that she destroyed them. And she destroyed them because they would reveal crimes, particularly crimes associated with the Clinton Foundation, pay-for-play type stuff. But the leading voice in calling for this is Hillary, one of Hillary's leading spokesmen. Isn't that ironic? One of the leading spokesmen for the Rotten Reverend Clinton calling for Ivanka to be investigated because of her email practices. Sending out, I guess, her private emails on a government server or something like that. So this is nothing like what Hillary did. There's no comparison whatsoever. And the only thing that this should do is piss Trump off even worse. Because you go after Ivanka, he takes that probably very seriously. And that's why he needs to do everything he can to seriously investigate the Rotten Reverend Clinton, the emails, Uranium One, the pay for play, the Wiener laptop needs to be looked at, all these things. He needs to put the rotten Reverend Clinton in prison because she is behind a lot of what is happening. She is behind it. And until her ass is locked up and put in prison, and even then she's probably still going to continue through her various friends and allies to continue to be a pain in the butt. So this is just typical, again, of the swamp. It'll go nowhere, of course. Now, I've been watching, I have a lot of people who watch this channel who are from the UK. And I've watched the Brexit stuff going on and what's going on in Europe like a lot of you do as well. We don't talk a lot about that here because of so many other things that occupy our time. But certainly what's going on over in the UK, the last few days have been a roller coaster. A couple, 3 days ago, you thought that was the end of the road for May and this horrible deal that she tried to cut, which really doesn't get the UK out of the Brexit, out of the EU, even though they voted for it. In fact, it kind of locks them in even harder into the EU. So a lot of people a couple of days ago thought that was the end, but now it looks like Theresa may survive. It looks like she might even be able to get this bill through, which will be a disaster. So I guess to my friends in the UK, what does this mean? If Theresa May is successful getting Parliament to bite on this and pass this thing, is that the end for the Conservative Party? Are they going to take massive losses as a result? And if so, who will be the beneficiary of that? Will the UKIP be the beneficiary? Will the lefties, the Liberal Party, the Labour Party, will they be the beneficiary? Maybe a little of both. And an even bigger question, if in fact this prevails, if Theresa May prevails and she actually is able to remain in power and she's able to get this horrible deal done, will that cause all these Brexit people to hit the streets? Are we looking at like mass chaos in the UK, a mass revolt? Or will they just take it and say, oh, well, that's the way things go, a few protests here and there, and they have to just suck it up and live with it? And an even bigger question is, if in fact the UK is unsuccessful at really having a clean Brexit, what does this say to other countries in the EU who may be wanting Brexit themselves? If not today, maybe tomorrow. I mean, if the UK, who never got into the, never gave up their currency, they don't use the euro. I guess they can use the euro, but they've retained their own currency, the British pound. But for all these other countries who did not and gave up their currencies that want to leave the EU, if you can't leave the EU, if the UK can't leave the EU, despite the fact that they never gave up their currency and they actually had a referendum which they passed, and they've been under great political pressure to do so, if they can somehow head this off and never really have to Brexit, never really have to do what the majority of people voted for, if the EU can be successful, along with the deep staters like May and all the rest, if they can be successful, then what chance do any other countries in the EU, far less powerful than the UK, what chance do they think they will have in trying to leave the EU? And what happens 2 to 3 years from now when the EU has an EU army, which will be used to put down any type of efforts to leave the EU? There's a lot of very big questions looming that will have tremendous consequences for the future of the EU and the future of nationalism and sovereignty for decades and decades to come. We are just going to have to keep watching this, but I'd be interested in the comment section of any of you who live in the UK to give me your thoughts on some of the questions I ask. The main ones being, is this the end of the road for Theresa May? Or will she survive, politically survive, and actually get this deal done? And if she does, will that cause the Conservatives, the Conservative Party in the UK, to take huge losses in the next election? And if so, who will be the biggest recipient, beneficiary of that, the benefactor of that? Will it be the Labor Party or the UKIP, the Independence Party? What do you think? Chuck the Cuck Schumer wants an investigation of the communications between Trump and Whitaker. He wants IG Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz to look into it. You know, Huckleberry Horowitz probably would yawn at that, even the thought of that, or laugh. It's not going to happen. Chuck the Cuck is clearly getting dumber and dumber as the days go on. And besides, the IG's a little bit busy right now investigating Mr. Halper, Mr. Downer, and Mr. Misfit, along with that Carter Page FISA warrant, along with those emails between Comey and the Gang of Eight. He's a little busy, Chuck. Obama recently gave a speech where he says that Trump is ignorant of climate issues because he's a racist with mommy issues. He's a racist with mommy issues. That's another good reason. I don't know how Trump can stand it. If I had on Obama what Trump's got on Obama, and I'm the president, and I see these comments, I got the Rotten Reverend Clinton spokesman calling for, you know, my daughter to be investigated because she sent private emails to a government email system, or I've got, you know, Obama out there saying I got mommy issues and I'm a racist. Man, I would be using every bit of evidence and every bit of power I've got to put both of them in the lockup. The fact that they're pushing him like this shows their arrogance and contempt. I mean, these people must believe they are completely above the law. And if I were president, I would not be able to handle that. I would be dropping the hammer, man. This would drive me nuts. I would want Obama and the Rotten Reverend Clinton in the lockup badly, very, very badly, and I would do everything in my power to make sure that happens. Trump was asked about Julian Assange in his little presser today. He says he knows nothing about the Julian Assange situation, and he really made no further comment on it, whether he agrees or disagrees, or he acts if he really doesn't know much about what's going on with Assange. We do know now that the indictment actually against Assange was filed in 2010. 2010. Who was president? Barack Hussein Obama. And who was Secretary of State? The Rotten Reverend Clinton. And we know that the Rotten Reverend Clinton actually commented in a meeting, asked about whether or not they could drone strike Assange. Who do you think it was that pushed Obama to get the indictments on Julian Assange? I'm thinking the Rotten Reverend. Homeland Security is saying that they're learning from their own intelligence as well as from Mexican government officials that there are over 500 known criminals in the caravan. Lindsey Graham was on PMS NBC with Chuck Todd, Sleepy Eye Upchuck Todd, and Lindsey Graham said that he's not looking to investigate the Rotten Reverend Clinton. Not looking to investigate the Rotten Reverend Clinton or emails or anything like that. He says he's interested, though, in the FBI's handling of the email investigation and the Russia investigation. So what happens, Lindsey, if you investigate the FBI's handling of the Rotten Reverend Clinton's email situation and you find that they did what we know they did, which was that they gave her a free pass. They exonerated her despite the fact that she was guilty as sin. Are you saying, Lindsey, that if you find that she was let off the hook for her crimes, and that's just the crimes relating to the email, of which there's many crimes around that, the destruction of evidence, violating a subpoena, classified information, many counts of that, many crimes committed within that general realm, not to mention what may be on the Anthony Weiner laptop, not to mention the Clinton Foundation, not to mention Uranium One, all these crimes that the Rotten Reverend has been convicted of or been guilty of doing, not actually convicted of, Are you saying, Lindsay, that if you discover all these things, that the FBI let her off the hook for all these crimes, that you're still not going to try to push for these crimes to be investigated? I certainly hope that Mr. Whitaker does not feel the same way. Certainly hope he does not. According to a new poll, CNN's Jake Crapper is the most distrusted journalist in media. Well, I can see that, but he's got a lot of competition, especially CNN and MSNBC. There's a lot of competition for Jake there. But yeah, I mean, he's kind of a shady-looking dude. No, I don't trust Jake Crapper as far as I could throw him or any of his friends. I put them all in the same bucket, really. I don't know how you distinguish between him and any of the rest of them. I mean, they're all just absolutely horrid. This is funny. Bernie Sanders now telling some folks that he's looking at the possibility of running in 2020. Well, you know, that's very interesting because the Democrats, after the last election, made a new rule. And the rule is that you have to declare that you're a Democrat and become a Democrat to run in the Democrat primary. And I think that you have to do this like a year before. And you can't just jump in from an independent, become a Democrat, and after election change back. They've put in place some rules to keep Bernie from doing what he did last time, which is he's an independent. He changes his party affiliation to Democrat to run in the primary, and then he switches back. So they've put rules in place to make sure that Bernie can't do that again. But he's saying he's looking at 2020. So if he says he's looking at 2020, he obviously understands the new rules would not prevent him to run, would prevent him from running as a Democrat, which means he would have to run as an independent. And he actually is an independent. In other words, he would have to run kind of a third-party, grassroots third-party campaign, which maybe he believes he can do. I mean, he can certainly pocket a lot of cash, but he can also split the Democratic vote in 2020 and cost the Democrats probably both houses of Congress with huge losses in both houses and absolutely the presidency. That's what he would do. He would split the vote, and he knows that. He knows that. So I'm not sure if he's just saying this so he can start taking donations, which he can pocket later down the road, because that's really what it's all about for Commie Bernie. He's getting rich in this game. He's getting rich in this game. Papadopoulos, George Papadopoulos, was interviewed on an Australian TV station. And he's making these comments that it appears that Alexander Down the Hatch Downer is now trying to, because he's given 3 or 4 different versions of what happened. We have rumors that Papadopoulos was actually being monitored and that they probably had that discussion that he had with Alexander Down the Hatch Downer. Papadopoulos suspects that Downer recorded it on his phone and thinks he may have passed that on. So these are all kind of like rumors going around. But Papadopoulos is now saying that he's trying to get his secretary, the woman who actually set up their interview, trying to get her, who's also intelligence, she's in the intelligence business, that he's trying to get her to back, Downer's trying to get this woman to back him on one of the 4 things that he's said at this point. So it's becoming laughable there in Australia. But on this Australian TV show, Papadopoulos says, again, that he was framed. He says that the reason he believes that he was targeted was because he says that the Obama administration was not happy with his activities and some of the contacts, some of the things he was working on in the Mediterranean regarding energy. And so they decided to finger him and use him as a pawn, as a sort of a punishment. He says he will be exonerated, that the truth will come out. He says that a judge is going to be ruling here shortly on his attorney's request to retract his guilty plea, that they have not decided yet. He is also saying that he told Uncle Bob the executioner about Misfit being suspicious and being tied to Western intelligence, believing he was tied to Western intelligence. He said, Papadopoulos said he told Uncle Bob when he was interviewed all about his episodes with Misfit, Halper, and Downer, and how he was suspicious of all of them. And he has also heard that there was a FISA warrant on him. Oh, I'm sure there was. Absolutely. and probably Flynn, and probably a lot of other people. Alrighty, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. You guys have a good night. Goodbye.